Yes, happy new month, end of the year, all that stuff. How are you? Hope the holiday was well. I'm pulling up, well, I have YouTube up now, so we're good. There we go. I hope all was well today as I get everything going here. I hope everyone was able to eat as much as they could, but then now probably back on detox like I am. I ate a bunch of stuff that I normally don't eat or shouldn't be eating. And got a little sick in the midst of it. So if I sound a little nasally, that's why. Yeah, I have everything up here. We're talking about effective communication tonight, which is always needed. This topic was from the poll, which was, I think, what did we do? The last one was 2 weeks ago because we skipped Thanksgiving week. What was last week? The last week. Oh, the week before last was embracing change. So that was the last live that we did. So from that poll, the embracing change and effective communication were the top two requested. So this is why we're doing this one, and then we'll do a new poll for next week's live because we only have maybe two more, maybe three more lives, maybe two. We'll see, depending on my travel. But we probably have about 2 to 3 more lives left in the year, which is insane to even say, or to even think about, because this year went by so freaking fast. So we'll do the last poll to finish out what we're going to talk about for the remaining of the year. And then 2025 will be coming, which, again, insane, crazy to me. But tonight, effective communication, I have 5 ways to effectively communicate. And then we have about, I want to say, 7 affirmations that I'll share after that. So I hope that this is helpful today. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach, primarily operating in ways to incorporate mindfulness in your day-to-day life, as well as breathwork and meditation. So like most of the channel is meditation and breath work, but from time to time or every week, hey Hiru, welcome back. Most of the time we'll do like lives like this every Monday to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, which is usually based off of the poll, as long as it's surrounding mindfulness, meditation, or mental health. So I hope tonight's live is helpful. Again, we'll be talking about effective communication. As someone, even as a mindfulness coach, communication can sometimes be difficult for me, not just because of just general life stuff, but even with ADHD, sometimes it goes in and out when it comes to communication and emotion regulation. And one of the reasons why I got into mindfulness and breath work altogether in general, because it helps with regulating emotions. So I'll have those couple of points that we'll talk through, and then I'll leave you with affirmations to take away. And then we already have a healthy communication meditation on this channel, so I'll make sure to tag that in the video, so that way you guys can go back to that. But I will have some additional meditations posted this week because I am a bit behind in meditation posting. So I'll make sure to get some stuff up this week for you guys. Cool beans. Again, this is actually very interactive, so feel free to ask questions. If you need me to repeat anything, let me know. So just kind of, check in with me if you have any questions, even if it's just letting me know where you're watching from. I'm in the Chicago area, but let me know where you're watching from, and if this is your first time, I would love to hear. Okay. Awesome. So effective communication, and we're also on Instagram, y'all. So I have the live up there too. Um, Effective communication. So point number one, which is probably easier said than done when it comes to effective communication. You have to listen actively or actively listen. And sometimes it's difficult when you have high emotions. So taking the time to slow down and really, really listen effectively. Hi, Sebastian. Welcome in. So that's point number one. Listen if actively, focus fully on who's speaking, avoid interruptions as much as you can, clarify to ensure understanding, remain present and engaged. So remain and keep eye contact. Give cues that you're actually listening, both vocally as well as nonverbal. Which is whether it be like head nods or whatever you need to, to portray. But ensure to listen actively and listen to understand, not necessarily be able to create an argument. Because a lot of times we listen to hear one word, and once we hear these trigger words or buzzwords, then we react to those versus what the person is actually saying. So first, and it's probably sounds very fundamental, but we need a reminder to listen actively and really actively listen to the other person and what they're trying to portray or what they're trying to say. Point number two, be clear and concise. So express your thoughts in simple, straightforward language. If this means you have to take the time to collect your thoughts or process your feelings, then do that. Sometimes people feel like, oh, when I go into these conversations, I never can get my point across, or I can never say what I mean, or I may say something I don't mean, or I may mess up my words or fumble my words, or I may walk away and say I should have said that, or I should have said this, or they're really overly anxious about communicating. One thing about being clear and concise is understanding when silence is important, right? Understanding that if you still need time to process what you're thinking, if you need time to process your feelings, if you even need time to figure out, you may know how you feel, you may have processed your feelings, you may have collected your thoughts, but you're having a tough time articulating that. Giving yourself the space to do that and being okay with that is also clear and concise, if that makes sense, right? So like if you are taking the time to say, hey, I need to articulate to my partner that that I no longer, want to be with them, right? If that's something that's a hard conversation that you need to have, it's a conversation that has to happen, but you're not quite sure how you want to articulate it, to articulate it, or for it to come across clear and concise. You taking the time to process that and you taking the time to figure out how you want to say it is okay. Sometimes we feel like we have to say things in the moment. Sometimes we feel like we have to respond right away. And sometimes being clear and concise is taking that space to figure out what you want to say or what you want to do or how you want to articulate it. So understanding that and being okay with that is a part of being clear and concise. Of course, you want to make sure that you say things clear, you say things in a way to everyone that's involved can understand. That's one part of it. But the other part of it is understanding when you're not in that space to be able to do that, right? And taking the space that you need to do it. There we go. Okay, so that was number two. Number three is know your audience, okay? Adapt your communication style based on the level of understanding, right? But also know who you're talking to. I know that sounds so simple, and I know a lot of these probably feel like really simplistic, but understanding who you're talking to will change or shift how you communicate, what you say, or whether you say anything at all. okay? Because a lot of times we run into um, communication issues when we're trying to communicate things to an audience that's not receptive to what you're trying to communicate. So, for example, like if you're having trouble with your partner, or you're having trouble with a friend, and you're, two consenting adults having trouble in an actual relationship, you're not going to go to a 5-year-old and tell them about your relationship issues and how you need help and how they need to understand what you're saying and articulating in order to give you advice. That's not the audience, right? That's not the person that you're even going to go to say something. It's kind of like that when it comes to different communication styles. So if you have someone that just doesn't have the mental capacity to even digest what you're saying, why even say it? This is something that I'm learning, because sometimes we try to prove ourselves to people that don't want to hear us. Sometimes we try to help people understand that are committed to misunderstanding us. Sometimes we try to overcompensate or work harder to get people to understand when they just don't want to understand. And if you will find yourself in this space like that, we're getting exhausted with communication because we're communicating to the wrong audience. This person may not be in the space, the mental capacity to hear what you're saying, whether it is if they want to or not. But we try to work harder and force our communication on people that are not the right audience. And what you have to understand when it comes to communication is that it is a two-way street. And if both people aren't even in the space to actively listen, be clear and concise in the communication, and even with the rest of the information that I'm going to share, then why are we putting all of our effort into that? And this is where effective communication is lost, because we have one person that's really trying to communicate their feelings, or what happened or whatever, and then we have someone else that is not willing to communicate. Whether it be not willing to communicate is the silent treatment, or they just yell and scream and they don't really listen and give and take in the conversation. They're always giving what they have to say, but never taking in what you have to say, right? If they are passive aggressive, if they are gaslighters, if they are exhibiting behaviors to where it's more physical than it is talking or having a conversation. There's so many different ways that you can think about your audience to understand, is this person going to be receptive to a conversation? Not what you're saying, because they may not be receptive. They may or may not be receptive to what you're saying. You don't know that. But are they going to be receptive to having at least a cordial conversation? And if they're not going to be receptive to having a cordial conversation, then there's no need for me to even try to prove myself in this conversation in this moment. Now, that may change. Maybe they're just upset and their emotions, they're not able to regulate their emotions in that moment, and they're just not ready to talk about it. That's one thing. That's something you can circle back to. But if you ever find yourself in a space where the audience is not, and when I say audience, another person, they're not receptive to a cordial conversation, then you've done what you could have done in that moment. So just understanding to know your audience, pick your battles. That's another thing. Like, some battles just don't, you can just let things, some things you can let go and save that for the battles that are really, important. But not everybody deserves all of that energy, all of your energy to try to effectively communicate, even for those who are close to you. if it's a family member or if it's just someone that's been in your life for a long period of time. Some people just need space, but some people just don't want to resolve conflict. And that's how you should approach these communicative conversations. You should approach it with, I want to resolve. Whether that resolve is what I want or not, I want to at least resolve the issue. And if resolving the issue is removing this person out of my life, then that's the resolve, then that's the resolution. But if you are in a space and you notice that you're speaking with someone and they're not speaking with you in order to understand or resolve an issue, then there's no need to continue. So I'll get off my soapbox on that. But understanding to know your audience, right? And last thing on knowing your audience, it also is based off of relationship. The way that you resolve issues in the workplace is going to be different than the way that you may resolve issues in your personal life. So just also understanding like your environment, how you know this person, and the type of relationship that you have with them and the type of relationship you want with them. And point number 4. Practice emotional regulation. Stay calm and composed, especially in challenging conversations. Perception, and understand perception isn't always fact, and delivery and tone are key. I say this as someone who struggles with emotional regulation. I say this all the time. Emotional regulation isn't something that has always come easy to me. And it's something that I'm still forever learning. I think we all are going to get to a point where, even if you can be the most regulated person, that you may have, a situation where you're not able to regulate as much as you have in the past. And typically, I'm, at a much, much better place than I was several years ago, but there are still instances where I still have a tough time regulating. So I'm saying this as someone, not as someone to judge someone else as far as like emotional regulation. I'm saying this as someone that has that difficulty too. Doesn't make it any less important, and doesn't make it, something that we shouldn't pay attention to or attempt to do. So emotional regulation is important when it comes to effective communication, because when you're unable to regulate your emotions, the decisions that you make in the heat of the moment are usually decisions that you may regret later, or may cause harm to you, yourself, or someone else in the space. So understanding that emotional regulation is important for effective communication, because once you are able to bring yourself down, calm yourself down, and compose yourself in a way to where you're able to be clear, to be concise, to think about who your audience is, think about how you want to articulate what you're articulating, and to be able to actively listen. It's going to be very difficult for you to do that when your emotions are high. So regulating your emotions is usually your first step. If you find yourself in having a conversation where it's starting to build up for you. Okay. So if you find yourself looking to communicate in a time where, sorry, I'm like moving my stuff around, but in a time where your emotions are not in the best space, regulate your emotions first. So if that means that you have to walk away, if that means that you have to tell, the person like, hey, this isn't the best time for me. Can we, put this to the side for a bit, and then we can come back to it on such and such day, tomorrow or later today or whatever. If you need additional time. In the moment, you may have to regulate in that moment, whether it be taking a deep breath, whether it be just taking a step back, being quiet, just allowing the other person to speak as you collect your thoughts or collect yourself. Again, walking away and coming back to it in a couple of minutes, rather it being the next day. So just thinking about what emotional regulation looks like for you. And one thing that made the most sense for me is to understand emotionally when I'm in a heightened state, what happens? What happens to my body? Do I get hot? Do I sweat? Do I start to shake? Do I get any type of feeling over my arms or in my head or whatever? Sometimes people get like a huge rush of heat. There's so many different things that happen when you're in these different situations. So getting a good understanding of what heightened emotions look like for you. Do you ball your fists? Do you grind your nails into your fists? There are so many different things that could happen when it comes to a heightened emotional state. So understanding what that looks like for you and finding ways to cope or to bring yourself down in that moment to self-regulate versus it having to be an outside factor to calm you down. It shouldn't be somebody got to hold you back or whatever. It has to be something that you can do and self-regulate on your own. And when you're able to do that, and again, breath work is the easiest way to do that, honestly, just by all of the different breath work techniques that we talk about on this channel. Breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your mouth is definitely important when it comes to emotional regulation, especially when you're trying to do something in the moment, when you're trying to have conversations about these things in the moment. So emotional regulation when it comes to effective communication is huge. When you're able to regulate your emotions, then you can pretty much do anything, honestly. Another soapbox, but you guys get it. And lastly, show empathy. So acknowledge others' feelings or perspectives to build trust. Validate others' perspectives and acknowledge and affirm what others share, even if you don't agree. So just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean that you can't validate their feelings, and it doesn't mean that you can't even value their opinion, right? Because you may actually value their opinion. And articulating that in difficult conversations is crucial and important. If you also see that someone was very vulnerable in their communication with you, and you can tell that it was hard for them to say the things that they say, thank them for saying what they said. Even if it's not something that feels good to you, even if it's something that you don't agree with, even if it's something that may rub you the wrong way, just acknowledging them in that moment to say, hey, like, I know that probably was really hard for you to say. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And then going and talking about how you feel about what they said. Like there's so much power in just taking a moment to acknowledge and empathize with someone before pouring into them what you think and what your opinions are. And that helps with the communication, especially if it's an authentic exchange. Now, granted, some people just don't have the greatest intentions when communicating, right? So in those moments, yeah, it may not go all over the best, but at least it's in a situation where you can at least validate what the others do. And I also want to say this. Sometimes we communicate with people based off of how they communicate with us. And we allow those people to change and shift who we are and our authenticity. Just because someone's a jerk doesn't mean that you have to go to their level and be a jerk also, right? Like you can still continue to be your authentic self. And if you authentically empathize with people and you authentically share your truth and and you're honest and you are forward with your communication and assertive, continue to be that. I feel like when it comes to communication, where we struggle the most is that we adjust and change based off of how other people treat us. And then once we get out of those situations, we then experience guilt and shame and things of that matter when it comes to how we communicate it because we stoop down to someone's level. So understanding that in addition to showing empathy, Allow, if the empathy is truly what you want to showcase in that moment, don't feel bad about it. Be who you are, and don't allow the idiocracy of other people to shift and change how you communicate with people. Because I think I hear this all the time of, oh, I'll just, however people treat me, that's how I'm going to treat them. And it's like, is that really the type of person that you want to be though? Because a lot of people don't treat people very well. So is that who you want to be? Is that what is that the type of mark that you want to leave in a particular situation? I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say that. So yeah, so the 5 points was: listen actively, be clear and concise, know your audience, practice emotional regulation, and show empathy. Okay, so we have our affirmations. I'm going to jump into those. I think it was 6, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it was 6 affirmations. But definitely let me know in the comments how this is, if this is resonating with you. Let me know if you have any questions in regards to any situations that you guys have in regards to communication. I definitely want to help. But otherwise, I will go through the affirmations. Actually, it's 7. So number 1 is: I communicate clearly and listen to understand. I communicate clearly and listen to understand. Welcome in. I communicate clearly and listen to understand. So with this affirmation, it goes back to when we're talking about being clear and concise in our communication, right? And listening to understand. A lot of times we listen to have a comeback. We listen to say something back, right? And when it comes to listening to say something back, that is not effective communication. Okay? Hold on, I'm doing some blocking. Thank you, Aman. I think is it Caleb? Aman or Caleb? So that's number 1. I communicate clearly and listen to understand. Number 2, I choose my words thoughtfully and with care. I choose my words thoughtfully and with care. I choose my words thoughtfully and with care. So sometimes we have a hard time communicating effectively because we're not choosing our words. We just saying whatever come to mind. And whatever comes to mind, that's what comes out. And then we wonder why we're having a hard time communicating with people. And we say the words, oh, well, this is just me being me, or I'm just being honest, or I'm just, telling it like it is. And you can tell it like it is and still choose your words, y'all. Like just because you're being honest, or just because you are, saying the truth or saying your own truth, doesn't mean that you can't still choose your words carefully when it comes to communicating with others, right? And there's always an instance of creating brutal situations without communicating with empathy, right? And I think this saying says, communicating without empathy is brutality, because of the fact that words do hurt, and words can create pain, and words can create damage and cause damage to other people. And so even in our truth and our honesty, we have to be careful and choose the words that we use in order to effectively communicate with others. Now, again, you also have to, know your audience, know who you're speaking to. Is this something, is what I'm communicating, is this the right time? Is this the person that I should be talking to? Is this a person that I should be completely 100% vulnerable with? Or is this someone that I should limit what I share or limit what I say? So just keeping that all in mind when it comes to choosing your words thoughtfully. Choosing your words thoughtfully isn't just protection for the other person, but it is also protection for you. Because if you are really thinking through how you're sharing information, um, especially for people who overshare, and I've been one of those people where I overshare. And I'm like, oh, probably shouldn't have said that to that person, right? So it's not just about being thoughtful of the other person. It's also being thoughtful of yourself and protecting yourself in situations where you're not sharing things that you probably shouldn't, or oversharing, or saying things in a way that you shouldn't say it. So keep that in mind. That was number 2. I choose my words thoughtfully and with care. Number 3, I am patient and present in my conversations, in every conversation. I am patient and present in every conversation. I am patient and present in every conversation. So understanding that patience is important when it comes to communication, especially in those very difficult scenarios, right? But being present is even more important. And being present is even more important because it's going to be hard for you. I'm just turning this down a little bit. It's going to be hard for you to have effective communication without being present in the conversation, right? If you're not present, if you're not listening, if you're not actively listening, if you're not attentive, if you're not paying attention, then it's going to be very hard for you to communicate. As an ADHDer, that ADHD BHDing, okay? Like, there's some times where I may have to say, hey, you know what? I am so sorry. I did not hear what you said. Can you repeat what you said? I'm sorry. I really do apologize. And just being forthcoming with that and saying, like, hey, I know that my attention span can be whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm like squirrel. Like, I get it, right? Just understanding that and being present even with that, and knowing that, and in those moments being honest and say, hey, I'm sorry, I did not hear that last part. Can you say that again? Can you repeat yourself? I apologize. So just understanding to be patient, but also very much so be present in conversations in order to effectively communicate. That was number 3. Number 4, I have the courage to speak up calmly and constructively. I have the courage to speak up calmly and constructively. So this is for those who have difficulty speaking up for yourself, right? I'm the opposite. I speak up too much. I'm that person that I speak up for myself. I speak up for other people, even if they don't ask for me to speak up for them. I am a born advocate, okay? And it's something that I have to learn to channel, right? Whereas I need to understand when I need to speak up, when I shouldn't speak up, when I should just observe versus saying things. So I'm the opposite of that spectrum. I'm going to say something, okay? But for those who have trouble speaking up for themselves, in particular, speaking up for yourself, this one's for you. I have the courage to speak up calmly and constructively. Sometimes we have a hard time speaking up for ourselves because it never really goes well when we do. We may have trouble articulating it. It doesn't come out the right way. It may come off as rude or brash, or it never lands, or even the other person never really is receptive to the speak up. So then it causes you not to speak up. You may not like how you sound when you speak. You may, there's so many different reasons why people don't typically speak up for themselves. But this one is a reminder to build up the courage to speak up to yourself, speak up for yourself in a calm and constructive manner. And a lot of times that comes with practice, and it comes with little things. I think I might bring this up on another live, maybe a few other times, but sometimes speaking up for yourself can be as small as you ordered something and they got the order wrong, and you had to go and say, hey, I ordered this, but I got this. And some people never do that. I was one of those people at one point. I would never, like, if I ordered something with onions or without onions, and then I got it with onions, I was just like, okay, I'll just take it off, or I'll just, all right, whatever. I'll just eat it. Just small things like that can say, hey, go back and say, hey, you know what? I ordered this without, can I have this? Just practicing speaking up for yourself is important. Trying it with your family members, people that you or your friends. If they say they wanted to go somewhere and you didn't want to go, and you're like, no, I really don't want to go. In the past, you may have just been like, all right, I'll go, and da, 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 da. But it's like, you know what? No, I really don't want to go. And I appreciate you inviting me, but at this point, like, I'm really not in for it. I really don't want to go. Speaking up for yourself happens, and the confidence building in that happens in small spaces for you to be able to build it up to the big spaces, whether it be with work or whether it be in relationships. But if you have a tough time speaking up for yourself, this is a reminder, for one, but it honestly starts with practice in the little things, and start with little things that you're comfortable with, right? Like I said, cheese on your burger is small, right? That's one thing. So start with something small, and work your way up. And the more that you start with something smart, start with something small and work your way up. As you do that, you'll build confidence in speaking up for yourself. And that's a part of communicating, because sometimes people suffer in silence, right? And suffering in silence can be very minimal, and then other times it can be very detrimental. When it comes to speaking up for yourself, it could just be the fact that if you are feeling depressed, or if you need support, or you need help, that's another way that you can kind of start to cultivate and advocate for yourself, because a lot of times people who have a tough time speaking up for themselves also have tough times asking for help from others. So that's another way to where you may get a lot of positive feedback, and that may build your confidence in that way too. So finding ways to advocate for yourself and speak up for yourself is a great way to help build communication skills, because now, instead of avoiding conflict, you're heading towards it. And not necessarily, just because you have conflict doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Conflict in general isn't a bad thing. It's actually very constructive, and it's a way for you to grow and to get better and to be a better version of yourself. So don't run away from conflict. It's just a matter of how you approach it. So keeping that in mind, especially if you have a hard time advocating for yourself. And it's really, it's a self-esteem concern that you want to have to start building. And if you have questions about self-esteem, I have a book. I'll tell you at the end, okay? So that was number 4. Number 5, I allow silence to create space for meaningful connection. I allow silence to create space for meaningful connection. I allow silence to create space for meaningful connection. Sometimes we have a hard time communicating because we won't shut up. Sorry. Sorry, I had to say it that way. But sometimes we have a hard time communicating because we are not able to just stop and listen. A lot of times people will tell you who they are without you having to say or ask any questions. Just simply allowing them to talk. And sometimes when you just allow people to talk, you get enough of what you need in order for you to not even have to engage. Sometimes silence is the way to effectively communicate what you need. And I know that sounds probably sounds a bit harsh, but and I'm not saying silent treatment, y'all. I'm not talking about somebody talking to you and you like intentionally not responding. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about allowing things to cool off, giving things space, giving things silence, right? But also in those heated arguments where you're right, when someone's doing this, just let them and watch how long it lasts. Watch how long that argument lasts. And it's not even about, again, it's not about silent treatment. It's not about that, because that would be called manipulation. So we're not going to do that, y'all. I'm talking about, or gaslighting. I'm talking about being silent and allowing someone to get out all of what they got to get out. And it's kind of like boxing, like letting them just kind of punch, and let them get out all they get out until they get tired, in order for you to, one, hear what they were saying, but then also be able to have a logical, lucid, calm response. So sometimes silence is the best form of action in heated situations. Now, granted, if they're physical with you, if it's abusive, that's one thing. We're not talking about that. Look, run, Forrest, run. All right, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those situations where both people really are trying to get their point across, but it's so heated to the point where no one's hearing each other. So sometimes your silence is needed to allow to regulate the space. Okay, so keep that in mind. Silence is usually when it's at the height of the moment, but it works in situations like that. That was number 5. We have 2 more, y'all. Number 6, I create safe spaces for others to express themselves freely. I create safe spaces for others to express themselves freely. I create safe spaces for others to express themselves freely. Creating a safe space is important for people, especially in relationships that you're trying to build. And the more that you're able to create a safe space for someone else, the more that they'll be more willing and vulnerable to create a safe space for you. And this is how you build quality friendships and relationships and partnerships and even business relationships, when you're able to create a safe space for someone. How do you create a safe space? Just being a listener. Just being open and non-judgmental when having conversations. Being not critical. Being curious is the word I'm looking for. Being curious about someone else's well-being, and they're intentionally, authentically curious. Some people just be nosy. Some people just be nosy. Like, some people just be nosy, just be wanting to know. I'm talking about being authentically curious about the well-being of someone else, and creating a space where they are able to share their vulnerabilities and with you, to the point where they feel safe and comfortable, feel loved, feel appreciated and validated. That's how you create a safe space for someone, and giving them the time to build that with you, because sometimes people they may have one conversation and then now all of a sudden we best friends. Nah, brother, we ain't best friends, not yet. Give me some time. So just keeping that in mind, when it comes to building quality friendships and relationships. And lastly, number 7, I recognize the power. Oh, sorry, y'all. I recognize the power of tone and use it to uplift others. I recognize the power of tone and use it to uplift others. I recognize the power of tone and use it to uplift others. Sorry, y'all. I'm tongue tied today. But I hope that one's helpful as well. That's really talking through, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And a lot of times what we say may be true, what we say may be honest, and what we say may be right, but the way that we say it is what derails the whole conversation and derails the relationship, derails just communication altogether. So just being cognizant of how you say things, and a lot of times how you say things is also your intent behind it. So it's a matter of checking yourself, checking why I'm saying the things that I'm saying, why I'm communicating the things that I'm communicating. Do I have authentic intentions behind this, or is this something that I'm trying to do to manipulate, or something that I'm trying to do to, get what I want out of the situation? Really thinking through those things when it comes to tone. You're welcome, Hiru. Thank you so much for joining. So I hope this is helpful. I'll go back through the top. Number one is I communicate clearly and listen to understand. Number two, I choose my words thoughtfully and with care. Number three, I am patient and present in every conversation. Number four, I have the courage to speak up calmly and constructively. Number five, I allow silence to create space for meaningful connection. Number six, I create safe spaces for others to express themselves freely. And number seven, I recognize the power of tone and use it to uplift others. So I hope this was helpful, y'all. For those, I said earlier, for those who struggle with self-esteem, I do have a book. It's called Nah Self, Let Me Be Great. It's going to be linked below. You can purchase it on Amazon. It's basically a self-doubt inspiration and workbook. So feel free to check that out if that's something that you're struggling with. Also, if you want to get our newsletters, go to haveninspired.com. I send out a weekly newsletter on Wednesdays. Usually it's recaps of either the live or additional mindfulness tips or new videos that are released, or just information that I want to share. So make sure to sign up there, again, at haveninspired.com. That will also be linked in this video too. But until next time, which will be next Monday, same time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Y'all all have a great rest of your day, a great week, and I will see you all soon. And then also to look out, there should be a new poll this week. So look out for the poll in the community space where you can vote for next week's live topic. Y'all have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.